Welcome, everyone. I am delighted to be here today with Leslie Pietrzyk, editor of South 80. Nope. Yes, South 85. I always want to say 85 South, but
That's
it's
the highway.
South
Yeah.
85. So welcome, Leslie. Great to meet you. I feel like we've been circling in internet orbs for some time, so it's great to meet you in person, and thank you for joining us.
Well, I'm excited to be here and happy to support the good work that you do.
Yay, thank you. So why don't we start off and you can tell us about the history of the magazine when I saw that it was founded in 2016. So what was the impetus for the launch of the journal and how did it sort of come about?
I think it was actually started in 2012.
Oh,
Yeah, so it is part of the Converse University Low-Res MFA program, which is based in Spartanburg, South Carolina, which is an artsy, gritty mill town and a very cool place. And so I was one of the faculty founding, faculty members from the beginning, core faculty. And, we're putting this program together, sort of all learning together, bootstrapping it. And then it was around 2012-ish or so. Some of the students, by then we had some graduates, wanted to put together a literary journal, and the director, former director, uh, thought that was a fabulous idea as long as he didn't have to do very much, as many people feel. And so the student who was our founding editor, Sarah Gray, her husband luckily was in tech, and she had him put up a website. She got everything organized. She sort of figured out the format she wanted. She and the director sort of worked together to come up with a name and sort of parameters. And the director was very clear, you will not be getting any money from me. So, go forth and put this journal together. And it has been entirely student run until last summer, which is when I still teaching and working for the low res MFA. I thought it would be really interesting to sort of set aside the teaching a little bit and see what it's like to run a literary journal, and with the hopes of kind of elevating its profile a little bit. It was still made clear to me you will not be getting any money from us. So some things never change. So we are right now in the process of putting together what would be the third issue under my editorship.
oh, great.
And the genre editors are usually graduates of the program, and then the readers are a mix of current students and selected graduates. So I keep an eye on, who is allowed to participate once they've graduated, and I definitely keep an eye on the current students to make sure, they're responsible and doing the job.
Mhm. Now, I saw, or I thought I saw on the website that the first issue was 2016. So was it print before then, or did I
Oh, no.
just totally miss something?
Okay, so what I think probably happened is that those early issues are not archived,
I
because
okay.
if you were, I am not a tech person, and so suddenly having to learn how. Oh, this is the glamorous life I signed up for. Oh, I have to format everything. Oh, I get to put it on the internet. Oh, I suddenly have a WordPress site that I know nothing about, and there's 800 pages.
Right.
So I'm pretty sure that this thing has been pieced together over time, and that somebody very thankfully at some point did a really great job archiving a bunch of stuff, but I am certain that those early issues are ephemeral, gone.
I see. Makes sense.
Yeah, yeah,
Uh,
yeah. So yes, thanks for pointing out the weird discrepancies.
Just more work for you. Just a reminder.
Go find those early issues, put them online. Yeah, to do.
Right. So can you tell us about the low residency program? And I think specifically, sometimes submitters get nervous when they hear that a magazine is staffed by students. I think they
Oh yeah.
immediately, assume that it's going to be 18-year-olds or 20-year-olds, not necessarily because they don't have great taste, but that there might be a bias in age or
Hmm.
perspective. I know low residency programs tend to be different in the student body. So can you give us a sense of the sort of type of, or like the demographic of the
Oh, sure.
students?
Yeah, and I'm not saying that I don't submit to I personally don't submit to journals that are run by only by students, but I do think about it. So I legitimately understand that concern, and that's why I thought, having a whatever faculty editor would sort of help our journal. So in a low residency, I think you all know that we meet twice a year in Spartanburg, and it's like very intense, amazing, 10 days, 2 weeks. Then everybody goes home and does their own thing, submits work to their mentor, gets critiqued, then we come back. And so because that kind of program sort of historically has drawn a lot of non-traditional students. We do have students for sure of all ages and all interests coming from a variety of places. So I really appreciate you asking that question because it makes me think this is another big advantage to sort of talk about the journal, that we do have a wide range of readers, genders, sexuality, ethnicities, and definitely ages. I guess I would say, thinking of our current readers, we have some people who just started the program, they're 22. And then we have some older writers, including one who loved our program so much, he got a fiction degree, and then he came back a couple years later to get a degree in creative nonfiction.
Mm,
And he is well, I won't offend him, but he's at least 75.
mm.
So we have a really huge range of people.
That's great. So take us through your editorial process. What happens when a piece comes in? How many eyes see it? And how does the work sort of move along the chain?
Yeah, so we try to have sort of two sort of defined reading periods. So we are not going to be like have had, like, oh, guess what? You have to submit in the next 5 minutes. Like, oh no. So we're usually open around June to August, and then usually January through March. So pretty committed to trying to have some sort of regular schedule. And so we get the work, and I check everything every day just to make sure everything seems, above board and what's going on, making sure we're getting submissions. And then we have four genre editors. We have a fiction editor, creative nonfiction, flash fiction, and poetry. And so this is why it's always important to put your work in the right category, because it can really back things up for you, the writer, if you wrote a poem that goes to the fiction editor. So the fiction editor will open up all the fiction uh, submissions, and then she has her team of readers, and she will assign it to, I think in fiction, it's usually two people, and she also reads the work. So for sure, I think the nonfiction, because this is a good hint to know, I think this is probably true of many journals. There's always fewer creative nonfiction submissions, so that is always a little bit of an edge, maybe, if you write a really great essay. So she probably assigns things to only one other reader, but she also reads it. So the reader reads it, puts a thumbs up, thumbs down, hopefully writes some comments. I try to encourage them to write comments as much as possible, partly because I see myself as a teacher. So I'm teaching people how to be good readers and making them think, why did I like this? Why didn't I like it? Write some comments. And then the genre editors keep track of things, make sure the readers are doing their assignments. They read everything as well. And then at the end of the submission period, there's like a few weeks of rapid catch up as all the procrastinators get busy. And then each genre editor will send me a list of, usually it's around I would say 6 or 7 that they and the readers have loved, and then some alternates, so maybe 10, and poetry gets a little bit more. And from those, I go read everything and ponder and feel sad that I have to make really hard decisions, and why can't I do them all? And then we'll pick usually four to five for each prose category, and then probably like 10 or so poems.
Mhm.
So it is, we're just a little journal in a sea of journals,
Mhm.
and you just see how hard it is to get published, kind of.
Mhm.
So I'm not saying that to be discouraging, just saying that that is the reality. But what I do know is that our journal, we really, I foster the desire to be very respectful of writers and their work. I want to make sure everybody's work gets seen by at least 2 people, and just to make sure nothing slips through the cracks. And I want to make sure everybody takes their role very with great responsibility, because they, as I point out to them, they all are sending out their work too. And it's like, I want you to imagine, you're on the other end reading, you're the person reading the work the way you would like your work to be read. So I like to feel that we are very caring, or
Mhm.
as caring as we can be, when sometimes we do have to say no
Right.
to a lot of people.
You talked about being good readers. Can you elaborate on that? You sort of just started to touch on it, but I'm curious, like, how do you train someone to be a good reader, and what does that mean for the literary magazine?
Well, I think the one thing that I really emphasize is to make sure that you are looking at what the story, I'm just going to use fiction
Hmm.
since I write primarily fiction. You are looking at what the story wants to do, not what you want it to do.
Mm.
And that it's a really different, you're entering into the story with sort of hopefulness, like, oh, I hope this is a good story, which is really different than when you enter into a critique for a workshop, which is, well, hopefully hopefully you are a little bit hopeful. Like, I hope my friend wrote a good story, but also it's like, I am reading the story. I have to find all the things that are wrong with it. I
Mm.
have to make smart remarks. I have to impress my professor. Here, it's just, I really want to love this story. I'm going to keep reading until I don't, kind of, until the accumulation has come, that's like, okay, I'm sorry. I wanted to love this story. I have tried, and I can't, for a variety of definitive reasons. And that those reasons also can't just be, oh, I just don't like this kind of story, or I don't like dogs, so I don't like this story,
Right,
or I
right.
don't like the second person. That's one of my personal battles, is somebody who writes in the second person. But as much as possible, just think, what is the writer trying to do? Are they doing it well and artfully? Can I see that this is the kind of story that I would want to recommend to my friends, that I would imagine being taught in a class someday? Is this an artful, good story? And I
Yeah.
always like to tell people that often when you're reading a bunch of stuff all at once, it can kind of seem daunting, and like, how will I know? How will I know? Like, is this
Mhm.
it? And it is, as frustrating as it is kind of like that, when you're in love, you know it. Like,
Mhm.
you're reading, I don't know, maybe, and then you read something, you're like, oh, this is it. This is it.
Mm.
This is it. I do
Yeah.
know. She was right. I do know.
I love that, and I think it's very refreshing because I know as a writer, and I'm sure many writers feel like when you're sending your work out, their editors there, if the editor even looks at it, they're just going through it like pass, pass, pass. And
Um,
I'm wondering if you maybe have a different approach because the magazine is also a kind of instructive tool, so you want the students to be engaging with it more seriously. So this could also kind of be a plug for student-run journals generally,
mhm,
because there's educational value in taking the work kind of more
mhm.
patiently and seriously.
I hope so. And I think that they learn, I mean, I know that anyone who reads manuscripts for a literary journal learns a lot really fast. I always advise people to do that. So I'm always reminding them, our students, like, think about this. Think about this is how how does your work fit in with what you're reading? And sometimes it will make them sort of more confident about their own work and like, oh, maybe I will at least try a better journal, not sort of self-reject, their own work. Like, oh, I can't send it anywhere. It's like you see work that isn't quite ready, and maybe you think, you know what, maybe my work is more ready than I thought. Or you read five stories that start with a dream, and you're like, you know what, maybe I will take that dream out of my story because I
Mhm.
see that that can be sort of tiresome.
Mhm.
And I guess, and what you also learn is someone like me, professor, whatever, can say, never start your story with a dream. And then you come upon a story that starts with a dream, and you're like, oh my God, this story is amazing. So
Right.
you see that rules can be broken.
Uh-huh. That is actually the perfect segue to my next question, which is that I know you are a very prolific and accomplished fiction writer, and you have a
Well, thank you.
wonderful list of credits to your name. So how has working on the journal, has it changed your approach to your own writing and to submitting and to giving more thought to what it is that editors do on the other side?
Oh, I have given so much thought to what editors do, and I am here to say thank you to all of them. I don't think writers truly understand how much work
Mm,
it is to run a journal. And I'm sure it's a lot of work to run a journal like the Paris Review. And I know people get paid to do that, but it's still a lot of work. But so many journals, nobody's getting paid. And
mhm,
the amount of effort it takes to put together, like for me to put together two issues a year, that was a huge, astonishing surprise to me. And sort of the first the first summer, I was like, why did I sign up for this? I just, I'm doing this one issue and I'm out. But I learned a lot. And so I'm in it. I'm in it for the long haul, and I do love it. So wait, what was your question? I know it's leading somewhere dramatic.
It was a multi-pronged question. So I guess
Yeah, yeah.
just on the first part of it, but then also what sort of lessons have you applied to
Oh,
your own craft and how you
right,
find
right, right. Well, here's just some really interesting tiny things. Like early on, somebody sent me an email and said, can I edit my submission? I sent the wrong file or I revised it. I'm like, I don't even know what that is. And I
Mm,
learned that I didn't know this. You could ask an editor, and there literally is no reason that they can't say yes to you. And for free, you can change your file. It's a really easy function in Submittable. I had no idea. I never would have thought to ask something like that. And it is true that if somebody right at that moment is reading the file, I would say no. But it's like, why can't I help a writer who's so
mm,
worried about their file? Well, just ask and do that, see what happens.
mm,
And I see that I sense that people get really worked up about cover letters. Like people have really researched who to write it to. They spell my name correctly, which frankly, I do appreciate, but it's like it just really doesn't matter. We are about the work. And so I think you, Becky, had a little write-up. Somebody did a guest piece about cover letters saying, I
mm,
just, put my bio in and I'm done with it. Like I definitely am like, thanks for your time and consideration. Here's a brief bio. Like I am not looking up names. I'm not stressing out. It just, at least for our journal, it just really doesn't matter. And I also think that we don't often do edits because it's sort of just beyond our capability at the moment. Sometimes we'll do tweaks, or we want, somebody had a story that we were going to accept and the title was terrible. And
mm,
then we asked them for a new title, and we had several good suggestions, and then they didn't like our suggestions and they gave another title that was even worse than the first title. So, and then we've had people who've kind of resisted our little tweaks. And I'm not saying that we are right, but I'm saying it did surprise me a little bit that a writer would be sending in a story to people you would have to hope they assume are, have editorial skills or, experience. And then they're very resistant about these tiny changes.
Mhm.
And we publish the stories anyway, and we use the first not good title. But I guess I was really surprised that writers push back on editorial
Yeah.
thoughts because in my own experience, anytime I've listened to an editor, which I would say I do 90% of the time. I mean, there are some things I have said no to, but the story's better. I always start with like, oh God, they don't know what they're doing. So my story's perfect as is. Well, I'll just try it. I'll just see. And I was like, oh wow, they know what they're doing. This ending is so much better. I
Mm.
should have listened to them. So I'm kind of surprised that writers don't listen to editors a little bit more.
Mhm. Mhm.
And I guess that's not really that can't be a blanket statement. I'm sure there are editors who suggest things that aren't right. And I know I have seen that in my own experience sometimes. But I think in general, editors see a lot of work and they see how to make it a little bit, it's usually sort of tighter or just
Mm.
better, a little bit better.
Mhm. Have there been lessons sort of more craft related, like things that you've applied to your fiction since you've been editor and seen the submissions?
I would say that I have worked, I mean, I always work hard on the beginnings, but you really, really, really want to have a great opening to whatever it is you're doing and to get to a point really quickly.
Mm.
So I think I look at my first paragraphs with a rougher eye. And
Hmm.
this is not to say that a reader only reads one paragraph, but that in a world of, limited time and energy and a reader who has a bunch of things stacked up plus their schoolwork, like they're gonna be quick. But
Mm.
I was pleased. So at the residency, we always all meet as a staff. I was pleased when I asked them, I said, I'm not going to require you to read the whole story or whole piece. I think it would be better if you can. And several people are like, oh, I always read the whole thing. I always do. I always think maybe it will get really good at the end. And that just made me so happy.
Uh-huh. So,
But
yeah,
you can't count on that. So have
right.
those beginnings really tight.
So what makes a great opening? Maybe that's too general, but what makes a great opening for this particular magazine? What do you like to see in an opening? Do you want it to be strong character, strong sense of setting, an interesting problem, some kind of larger concept?
Guess like not to I've never really thought about it quite this way, but like to if I had to boil it down to a formula,
Mhm.
I think I might want to see some strong sense of voice. And it doesn't have to be like a voicey voice, like, oh, y'all, but like a voice, a point of view voice. I would like to see like one or two sentences of really great writing. And by
Mhm.
that, I don't mean it has to be some intricate, long, flowing paragraph, but just a sentence that feels really perfect. Like a sentence or just like, oh, this writer can write. And then I would like to see maybe both of these, but at least one of these, a sense of a very interesting character or setting and a conflict. Like, even if it's just a tiny conflict, I think it was Kurt Vonnegut who said you had to have a conflict, even if it's just getting up and walking across, your character has to walk across the room to get a glass of water. Oh, that was not conflict, that was desire. But so like a conflict or a desire or something. What is this? What am I going to see here? And then like for a poem for me, that's a little different. I am fine being a little mystified in a poem. I'm fine understanding what's going on, but I'm also fine being mystified. But there's this sort of feeling that I want to have, like I am seeing something I've never seen before. I'm reading something only this writer could have written. I guess that goes for everything.
Mhm.
But yeah, that paragraph, some sort of point of view, voice, a suggestion of what is going to be ahead, conflict of the character, and then some perfect sentence.
Mhm. So it
Yeah, you
sounds
did
like
perfect.
for the fiction that it's more traditional in the sense of character arc. Do you publish experimental work as well?
I would say that would have a harder time
Mhm.
here. We do have things that are sort of unusual or like a little bit of an unusual form or structure, but I would say something super experimental, probably we are not the best readers for that.
Sure. Can you talk about the nonfiction as well? What you like to see in nonfiction, the style of nonfiction? I'm guessing it's not like reporting, but more kind of personal essay.
I think that a little bit of reporting, as long as there's a personal connection, like in the first issue, we published an essay by Sue Eisenfeld, and it was about her experience staying in it was a building in a Caribbean island. I wish I would could remember for sure. And sort of it was the history of that place, which of course was sort of dark and racial and terrible. And then her experiences through there. So something like that would be fine.
Mm.
But you're right, if it was just somebody's journey to I don't know where, journey to Tibet or something and Tibetan politics, that probably would not be right for
Mm.
us. And I think that we probably, I mean, I would say that most of our nonfiction is pretty personal. So more sort of personal essays instead of like essaying, whatever, um, talking about topics. So it's something more sort of memoir-ish.
Mm.
And again, it has to be something that we can feel. When I talk about a really great essay, I think it's one in which the writer has discovered something new. And almost always you can read an essay and find that point where the writer was writing and said, I didn't know this about myself or the
Mm.
topic that my mother or whatever. And so something where the writer has discovered something, those make me very excited.
Yeah, that makes sense. We have a question here. How does being part of a Southern university influence your journal and its editorial approach?
I don't think it does. I think maybe people see our name and send us some southerny stories. Like there are a couple southerny pieces for sure, but I don't think any of us read thinking, I know I don't read thinking, oh, this is a journal in the South, so I need to do something special or different. And the South 85, that is the highway that runs from Richmond to Montgomery, Alabama. I mean, it's an interstate highway. I don't think anyone thinks about those terms now when you're caught in traffic on it, but and it goes through Spartanburg. So I think that the title is more like, here's the highway that goes through Spartanburg versus, oh, Richmond to Montgomery, Alabama. What does that mean? I don't think anybody thinks about that.
Mhm.
I know I don't.
Can you talk about things that you see in submissions that are indicative that the writer is doesn't really quite have their sea legs in the work quite yet, or signs that they're a beginner? Not that there's anything wrong with being a
Mhm.
beginner, but sort of moments where you see cracks and maybe like common kind of pitfalls or signs that the writer isn't quite fully there with the work.
I would say that often you can see that really quickly at the sentence level
Mhm.
that I'm not saying I would reject something from reading one paragraph, but that if I see in this one paragraph, opening paragraph, that they have used the word burned twice in this
Mm.
little tiny space, and that there's a cliche like the candle at both ends, burning the candle at both ends, and then they also misspell a word.
Mm.
That's just going to make me, I'll just say, a little less hopeful. But I probably, if there was something interesting, I would keep reading because I want to be hopeful. But that really it sort of starts me out with a bad feeling. I would
Yeah.
also say this is something I personally have started thinking about and sort of trying to get more people on my bandwagon with titles. Like
Mhm.
titles are so important. If you've never been on Submittable from this end, you just have this long list of titles. And, maybe poets kind of luck out because they could just put like three poems for South 85. Okay. So I can't make a judgment. But when I'm seeing a bunch of titles and it's like The Omen, The Bear, The House, Home Sweet Home, I'm like, none of those are exciting. Those may be the most amazing pieces,
Mhm.
but I can't help but enter a little bit less hopefully because that title absolutely does not entice me. Whereas, and titles, of course, are very subjective, but like here's a title from our most recent issue, Thieves of the Western World. Like
Mm.
that's really interesting oh, what is that? What does that mean? Or that was a story, or a coastline thinks aloud in 2024. That's a
Wow.
poem.
Mhm.
Like that just really makes a huge, surprising
Mhm.
difference.
I
So,
completely agree. I am
oh,
on that
good.
bandwagon with you, Lizzie, because I did a session on titles. You can tell me if this is true or not. I argued that an editor will look at a work sooner if the title grabs them. I don't know, maybe that's not how it works at the way Submittable is designed, but I know if I were an editor and I saw Home, Home Sweet Home, Far Away from Home, and then I saw Thieves of the Western World, I would jump right into that more interesting story.
Probably so. I mean, it just sort of depends on if you like pick through things or you're just plowing down the line. I certainly know that if there were paper manuscripts, I would pull The Thieves of the Western World out on top to read that first.
Mhm.
And I would just be, I just, it's you can't help but just be a little more excited.
Yeah.
And does that help your chances? Probably should it, maybe not. Maybe Home Sweet Home is an amazing story, but I'm just starting out in a better frame of mind and I'm only human,
Mhm.
sadly. So yeah, titles, sentences, and then what I would also say is you're reading along, everything's good, and then the ending, not like that last paragraph ending image thing, but just even the resolution sort of
Mhm.
feels too easy or too pat or unsurprising or too happy. So I guess those would maybe be three areas that I would say to ponder about your own work: your title, your sentence level, especially, well, like flash fiction, you don't have any, and poetry, you don't have any escape. But even in a short story, you never know which sentence the reader suddenly is going to like suddenly notice like, oh, okay, so they all should be pretty good. So title, sentence level, and resolution, I
Mhm.
guess.
Can you talk about other common, I guess pitfalls is the word that I'm thinking of, like where stories just kind of fizzle out, too many stories fizzle out at the end, or too many stories start with dreams, or things that you see a lot of in submissions that just you want to tell writers, get this part of your work together.
Oh yeah, I think the ending, I think dialogue can be really
Mm.
hard to, I love dialogue. I love writing dialogue. I work really hard at it. I think sometimes people just kind of slap conversations on the page instead of really thinking, does this need to be dialogue? Does this sound not like real life people talking, but like what people hope they sound like in real life? Like a little more stylized. Think about why the dialogue is there. Um, sometimes, well, I wrote a whole book about grief, so I definitely like writing about grief and reading about it, but it's harder to sometimes make that feel new and fresh in a sense. So I feel bad saying that because I feel sad for everybody who is writing about grief, and I respect that and understand that, but just know that you're going to have to probably push a little harder to
Mhm.
find your story. And usually by pushing harder, it's like, I guess I would almost always say go smaller instead of bigger.
Mhm.
Like find a smaller thing to make us cry instead of the big giant story of your, dead mother or
Mhm.
whatever.
You
And
actually wrote a wonderful piece for Lit Mag News about going darker.
oh
Can
yeah,
you
yeah.
talk about that and any advice that you can share for writers about how to go darker in their
Mm,
work and maybe why that appeals to you as a writer and an editor?
hmm I guess in my millions of years of writing, like almost everything that certainly in later years, everything that got published was more personal and more difficult and harder to put on the page. And it seems like it shouldn't be like it should be. Why can't I just make up a fun story and you'll like that? And like, oh, okay, we kind of like that. But really, we want to know how you felt when your husband, died one Sunday morning. Like, we want to know what that was like. You're like, well, that's not very fun, but it's just more authentic and more real, and people feel like they are getting a story that only you can tell. And kind of the problem can be, especially if you're writing, personal work, whether you call it fiction or not, or you say it's the speaker of the poem. I mean, part of it, it's really hard to go back to that time or that place, or maybe you haven't been away long enough, and it's really hard when something super personal gets, rejected, or somebody doesn't understand it in your writing group. So it is more difficult. And I think that's why it is more, I just think that's why it's better. You are going to the place where all the really hard, true stories are, and you are wrestling with the demons, and you are emerging the victor with your story or poem. And, I think I got this metaphor that this is in the essay. I got the metaphor from Margaret Atwood of like the guy who played the lute, Greek guy. Does anyone remember? Anyway, he had to go down in the underworld to rescue his
Pan.
bride. No, a different flute, different guy. But thank you. Anyway, he had to go into the underworld. His bride was stolen and had to play the music. And then they said, okay, you can go, you can take your bride, but don't look back.
Oh, is this
And of course,
your
yes, yes, yes. And of course, she looked back, was dragged back down, and he went out. So the trick is you have to know that you, through craft skill and your emotional fortitude, can go down and then return with the story. And the kind of ironic thing is that the story that he came back with, the story is so much better because she did look back. Like, it wouldn't really be much of a story. Well, I went down there, I played my lute or whatever, and got my bride, and here we are. We're happily ever after. Like, no, the story is, and my heart was broken again. Like, that's the story. So you have to find that, I think.
Yeah, that's so interesting. And it also says something about human nature and temptation and sort of the inability to resist that
Of
temptation.
course, I know I would have looked back. Like, how could I, like, oh, they won't see me looking like, oh, busted.
So this is sort of more craft related questions, but I'm
Mhm.
curious if you feel like it's harder because your own standards are higher. And also, this is something I've been thinking about too. Like you've published so much, you've published so many stories, and I imagine at some point like you don't want to repeat ground you've already covered. So you just
Mhm.
have to keep going deeper and deeper and trying to find more. In some ways, like when you're just starting out as a writer, that's a kind of beautiful golden period because everything is fresh and everything you're saying is brand new. But when you've built up a track record of publishing and you have a lot of work already out there, the pressure is on you and your own personal pressure too, right? To explore new territory. So I'm curious if you feel that way in your writing and if that's part of why it's harder or it's just harder because it's always hard.
Well, it's always hard, but I definitely feel that way. Like I feel that way right this minute. I finished a book in the spring. Uh, that I really love, and my agent sent it out. She sent it out to a bunch of editors in New York, and then she went on maternity leave for like till this week, actually. So, so it's like, yeah, so I did all that. Now what's happening? Nothing. Now what do I write about? Like, it's hard when you are mining stuff and you're working, can I say ass on Zoom, on this Zoom? You're working your butt off to try and tell a good story, and you feel confident, you've learned the craft, not everything, of course, but stuff, you know what you're doing to some extent, and the world just doesn't care. I mean, the world never cares. And kind of the world, in a way, maybe it's like the world is never going to care, and that can't matter to us. And that's easy for me to say to you, and it's less easy for me to hear for
Hmm.
myself.
Hmm.
But what it has to be is the journey of the writing has to be, well, the writing and the life. So yeah, so I've been writing forever. I got an MFA right out of grad school, which was a huge mistake, but I did it anyway. Just writing, writing, writing. I wrote three novels before my first novel got published. So writing, writing forever, and some published, some not, ups and downs, dark times. But what I got from all that, I am not famous. I'm not going to win a Nobel Prize, but I've had an amazing life that is surrounded by books and writers like you guys, people who think it's important to talk about writing, people who care about what a perfect sentence might be, people who think about titles, people who are so smart to live a life surrounded, immersed in that. Like that is what writing is, or it has become to me. I mean, would I rather have writing that is winning Pulitzer Prizes and, $50 million? I don't know. Probably, let's be honest, probably I would. But to understand that the goal of writing can't be only getting published. The goal of writing has to be studying the world, studying yourself, knowing that you see something nobody else can, and knowing that you have the skills and capability of conveying that on a page so that somebody, some girl like me at the Iowa City Public Library pulls a book off a shelf in the adult section and is like, oh my God, this is how I think. I can't believe there's somebody else in the world like that. I mean, to be able to do that is an amazing gift. And in my better moments, that is enough.
Hmm. Yeah. Do you have a sense of that same feeling as an editor? And I know like sometimes writers feel frustrated because they get work published in a magazine and it just you work so hard and you spend so long waiting and then it finally gets published in a magazine and then it just like crickets, right? So I'm
Right,
curious
right.
if
I
you,
know.
as an editor, maybe you experience that doubly because you have your own writing that you're trying to get out in the world, and then you have like all these babies that you're trying to nurture too. And what kind of relationship do you have with readers? Is there any kind of like promotional work, or how do you handle
Mhm.
that kind of silence for the work that you're publishing?
Yeah, I think that's one of the things we work to do. And again, this is some of the work that I think writers never understand is so difficult, or not difficult, but time consuming, like trying to promote stories, trying to promote our writers, putting together little graphics when we nominate people for awards, even just nominating people for best of the net. I mean, that took me a full morning of work, finding all the stuff, printing, like
Mm.
organizing their forms, doing all this stuff. It's really a labor of love when editors do that. And I decided too, I think this might be kind of subversive, I don't know, but so we nominate for the push cart and the best of the net, and then our journal has an award sort of series, where one person will win $100. I wish it was 1,000, but it's 100. And to think, well, we could just nominate all the same people for everything, or we have a lot of great work in the journal. Like we can nominate, many people for things. So I think that that's a really nice way to go about it, is to think, I'm not just nominated. So you won the Editor's Choice Award, you automatically are in Best of the Net, automatically the push cart
Mhm.
nomination, our pushcart nominations. Like, why not, give everybody a little bit? It's sort of like, the whole thing, they're like lottery tickets anyway. Like, give everybody a little lottery ticket and let them be able to put that on their CV or have that little hopeful
Mhm.
moment when
Yeah,
those come out. Yeah, so we try to promote work, but I think the social media landscape I find kind of scattered these
yeah.
days. Uh, the difference between last summer when I started, and that was before everybody left Twitter/X, and this summer was really remarkable in terms of
Mhm.
engagement and reaching people. And we're on Blue Sky, but I don't like that very much. So I guess we're sort of still struggling to figure out how best to find people,
Mhm.
outside the sort of Converse community. And then one thing that writers should know, I mean, every editor, every journal really appreciates if you share work widely. And not only your work, I hope that's like understood that you'll do that, but even just you read something in somebody's journal and you like it, spread the word. Why not?
Mhm. What advice would you have for writers? And just, I think anyone can relate to what you were describing, that feeling of, I mean, there's so many highs and lows too, right? Like the high of getting an agent and then the low of never hearing back from them, or
Right,
like the high
right,
of
right.
publishing a novel and then the low of, it being taken out of the bookstore after 6 months. I mean, there's so many, jubilant moments
Yeah.
and then kind of causes to despair. So what advice would you have? Let's say there's a writer out there and they're just like in a rut. They're
Mm,
submitting, they're not, their work just isn't landing. Do you have like practical advice to maybe reassess the market, or
hmm.
spiritual advice, or, any kind of insight that you would offer to that writer who's in that kind of funk and maybe not trusting that their work has
Right.
it's in the world?
Right. So on the practical side, instead of the grand emotional, art lasts and matters side. So on the practical side, I would try to do something to shake something up. And some of the things I've done, I started during a very dark time. I started a prompt writing group with just random people in my neighborhood. We have now been meeting for like 15 years.
Mm.
And the idea of our prompt group was very open-ended prompts. Everybody writes. You read if you want to, and no critiques. You just say nice things or ask questions. And I started that as a way to remind myself that writing is joyful. Like I started out because I love to write, minus all the publishing stuff, writing is amazing. So I started the prompt group. Another thing I have done is try different forms or, shake things up. So my novel sucks. Like, okay, time to go back to short stories. My short stories are terrible. You know what? I'm going to try writing some flash fiction.
Mm.
And I published a couple flash fictions over the summer. I could not believe how quickly people respond in the flash
Mm.
fiction world. It
Mhm.
was amazing. It was very
Mm.
compelling to see that I would hear back in a week. And then when I got my story accepted, it came out like in 6 weeks. Like it was just remarkable.
Mm.
So flash fiction, some friends I know who were fiction writers started writing poetry. Try something different
Mm.
or take on some kind of project that will focus you, whether it's, like write a new beginning to a story every day. All you have to do is write one paragraph. It can be as wild as you want, and then do another one the next day. Or take the same walk every day and force yourself to observe something new. Just, I think nature is very helpful in to help resolve funks, but just something that's different. You write in the morning, try writing at night.
Mm.
You can only write at home, go to a coffee shop. You can only write in a coffee shop, go sit by a lake.
Mhm.
Just something that will be different. And then another thing I like to do is read reliable books I've loved, either like novels or craft books. Like I think Bird by Bird by Anne Lamott is a good curative.
I love that, especially the prompt group. I actually was just looking
Mm,
writing workshops by a particular writing organization. I saw they had a generator class, which is just prompts and that kind of like
Mm.
open supportive feedback. And it was $650 for this one
What?
class. So I love your alternative of just meeting with people, maybe, by Zoom or
Yes.
people locally, however you can do it, whatever works for your schedule, and just giving each other prompts and having it be like an open, supportive environment.
Exactly, exactly. Because I mean, and the pressure is off when you're writing a prompt. It's like we write to one word for 15 minutes and another word for
Yeah.
15 minutes. So 30 minutes. How good can it be? But people have come up with amazing, amazing, amazing things in these half hours. It's just astonishing. It's so inspiring to see how everybody approaches the same prompt, and then inspiring when somebody does something incredible, and then just interesting if it's not incredible, there's something that you learn or see. It's just, I just love it. And then if you really can't read, then you don't have to. Like, it's so easy.
Mhm.
Even the harshest critic, ourselves, can't be mad at something we wrote in 30 minutes. Like, come on.
I love this. I think I might have to start this at LibMag News. Okay, this is
Yeah,
great.
yeah.
Going back to the magazine, is there anything in particular that you would like to see more of in submissions? Any particular subject, style,
Oh,
theme?
Um, yeah, I don't know. I guess I haven't become all jaded and cynical yet to sort of know those kinds of things. I will say that we have had themes for the past three issues, like really open-ended themes like metamorphosis. Then we had borders, lines, and boundaries, and this was deluge, drought. We're going to do a themeless issue next time. And I sort of want to call it Surprise Us, but then I'm afraid it's just going to be like people writing about surprising things. But what I really want is to be surprised. I really want to feel like I'm seeing something I don't know. And when I say something I don't know, it that makes it sound like, oh, well, my story that is takes place in a Starbucks, well, she won't like that. But like, lots of things can happen in a Starbucks. Just because we've all been to a Starbucks doesn't mean there can't be something surprising or deep or emotional or hilarious that's possible. I think there's something too about smallness. Uh, Lately, my short stories that I write on my own have been like 8,000 words long. I mean, this is ridiculous. It's just ridiculous. So maybe that's why I'm thinking about smallness myself lately. But I think that what I personally really love is a tiny moment that feels like something huge.
Mhm.
And so, like, a lot of my stories might be people at dinner, so the course of like a dinner, um, 7,000 words, but like the only thing is people sitting at dinner, kind of, but a lot of stuff comes out. So I think that's kind of a personal thing that I like. I know that the readers really like things, they like sort of magical realism things a little bit. They like surprises in that way. So that's a good thing to think about. But I sort of resist trying to write something, wanting people to write something for an editor or for a journal. I honestly think it's better to write the story you need to write, that you need to tell, and then figure out what journal it might be appropriate for. I just feel the writing should come from you.
Yeah.
But but anytime you have a setting that's kind of unusual, I will say probably any editor oh is going to perk up a little bit. Like my friend was talking about something she was working on where the main character did barrel racing in the rodeo. Like, who's not going to be like, oh, what's that all about?
Mhm.
Kind of thing.
Mhm.
Or this is just the weirdest, talk about surprising me in the first issue. I would never have predicted this, but there's a story from the point of view of a frog, because the theme was metamorphosis. And at first I was like, really? A frog? I don't know. It was just so charming. I kind of loved it. I never would have thought that. So just do what you want. This writer just wanted to write from the point of view of a frog, and then she found a reader who was like charmed by it. You
Yeah.
just don't know what's going to happen. So you might as well write what you want to write.
Absolutely. Is there any opportunity for people to get involved with the magazine, or is it pretty much limited to the students at the program?
It at this point it is limited to the students unless except for the artist in residence, which is somebody who I sort of select what I'm look for. I mean, I've just picked people I've known and seen, but what I'm kind of looking for, I probably should open it up at some point, is somebody who identifies first as a writer, but
Mhm.
then who also takes some kind of photography practice. I mean, just with an iPhone or, cell phone is fine, but so someone who's a writer who takes beautiful photographs, those are the people who we feature in our artwork.
Okay.
And they put together a portfolio for each issue, sort of thematically
Mhm.
related.
Okay. So I have one final question, and Leslie, this has been so great. So thank you so much for sharing your insights
Oh,
and
thank you.
opening up about the real writer struggle, and also telling us about your magazine. It's just been great. So one final question. This question I ask all editors: what keeps you motivated? What keeps you inspired? I think you touched on this already a little bit, but just on those days where you're just like, I cannot look at this magazine. I can't go through this pile of submissions anymore. What keeps you
Mm-hmm.
feeling motivated and inspired to do this work?
Well, honestly, the world needs art, and I will, fight to the death to defend that and believe in that. It's how I've arranged my entire life, is that the world needs art and artfulness. And I guess this is the one sort of way I can contribute through my own work, which maybe the world cares or doesn't care, by putting together this journal, which the world can maybe cares or doesn't care, and by assisting and teaching students to send them out with the same mission. And maybe the world doesn't care, does care. Like at some point, someone is going to click and the world will care somewhere along this long, giant path. And whether it's 200 years from now or tomorrow, like I can't worry about that. I am part of the process. People came before me, people come after me.
Mhm.
Like it's just part of the job
Yeah,
of being a writer, an artist, and trying to make the world better in the way I know how.
yeah, makes
All
sense.
right, off to edit.
Well, we'll let
Laugh.
you get back to it. Thank you so much, Leslie.
No, thank
Great.
you so much.
Thanks everyone for coming out, and we'll see you soon.